Donald Trump managed to win the election by presenting himself as a populist, a man of the people. He crafted an image that distanced himself from his billionaire lifestyle, complete with golden towers in New York City, and instead positioned himself as someone who would lower grocery costs and champion the average working-class American. Yet, what stands out is that after securing the presidency, he quickly abandoned many of these promises, admitting that he couldn't deliver on key pledges. Even more striking is the fact that voters continued to support him despite 4 years in office, where he failed to address their core concerns. This raises a crucial question. Why do so many working-class Americans fall for Trump and other right-wing politicians? What is the left missing, and why do these voters continue to drift away from Democratic messaging? Is this purely a cultural issue, or is there something deeper at play? One of the most apparent reasons for this disconnect is the Democratic Party's long-standing struggle with effective messaging. For years, decades even, Democrats have failed to articulate their vision in a clear and compelling way. Their policies often make logical sense and are backed by data, but they are rarely framed in emotionally resonant terms that stick with voters. Conversely, Republicans excel at messaging, even when their statements are disconnected from reality. Take, for example, the myth of trickle-down economics. For over 40 years, Republicans sold the idea that giving tax cuts to the wealthy would eventually benefit everyone because the wealth would trickle down. This concept sounds intuitive to many voters. After all, if businesses and wealthy individuals prosper, wouldn't they reinvest and create jobs? Yet, time and again, the data has shown this doesn't happen. Even David Stockman, one of the architects of trickle-down economics, later admitted it was a failure. Despite this, the idea persisted because it was sold with passion and conviction, which voters found persuasive. This highlights a broader problem. Voters often believe ideas not because they are true, but because they are presented with emotional intensity and certainty. Republicans have mastered the art of appealing to emotions, fear, anger, and hope, while Democrats frequently lean on facts and logic, which fail to inspire the same visceral reaction. But perhaps the most significant problem is how little political information most Americans consume. Over 90% of Americans get their political news primarily from campaign ads aired during election seasons. Cable news, even with Fox News' dominant ratings, reaches only 2 to 3 million viewers a night, less than 1% of the U.S. population. When you add in MSNBC, CNN, Newsmax, and podcasts or YouTube channels, the total daily reach might, optimistically, approach 5% of the population. This means 95% of Americans are not engaging with political news regularly. They're not tuned into debates over policy or following legislative battles. Instead, they rely on 30-second attack ads and campaign promises to shape their perceptions. This lack of exposure to substantive political discourse leaves them vulnerable to manipulation through emotionally charged advertisements rather than rational analysis. For many Americans, politics feels like an exhausting and toxic arena they'd rather avoid. They focus on their daily lives, work, family, and personal struggles, leaving little room for deep dives into policy discussions. As a result, campaign ads become their primary source of information, reducing complex issues to simple slogans and sound bites. When a politician like Trump steps in and says, "I'm going to fix the economy, lower your taxes, and bring back jobs," many voters take it at face value. They hear these promises repeated over and over again during election season without the context or analysis to question their feasibility. Meanwhile, Democrats often fail to counter these messages effectively, relying instead on lengthy explanations that fail to break through the noise. To make matters worse, Republicans exploit cultural and identity-based issues to build emotional connections with voters. They frame themselves as defenders of traditional values, patriotism, and personal freedom, while portraying Democrats as elitist, out of touch, and hostile to American traditions. This narrative resonates deeply with voters who feel alienated by rapid cultural changes and economic uncertainty. At the same time, Democrats have struggled to build emotional connections with these voters. While their policies often address systemic issues like income inequality and healthcare access, they sometimes come across as condescending or dismissive of rural and working-class concerns. For instance, Hillary Clinton's infamous basket of deplorables comment alienated many voters, reinforcing the perception that Democrats look down on them. Another factor is the widespread distrust of institutions, including the media and government. Many voters feel betrayed by elites and see Trump's anti-establishment rhetoric as refreshing and genuine, even when it contradicts his own billionaire status. His willingness to attack the political establishment resonated with voters who felt ignored or marginalized. This distrust extends to the media, which many conservatives view as biased against their values. Fox News and right-wing outlets have capitalized on this mistrust, creating an echo chamber that reinforces their narratives. Meanwhile, progressive media often struggles to reach these audiences, leaving them isolated from alternative viewpoints. The left's failure to address these cultural and emotional factors has created a vacuum that Republicans have filled. While Democrats focus on policies and programs, Republicans tell stories that resonate on a personal level. For example, when Trump promised to build the wall, it wasn't just about immigration policy. It symbolized protection, security, and taking control. Democrats often countered with data and statistics, but they failed to offer an emotionally compelling alternative. Moving forward, the Democratic Party must rethink its approach to messaging. First, it needs to simplify its language and focus on emotionally resonant themes. Instead of lengthy policy proposals, Democrats should tell stories that illustrate the real-world impact of their policies. For example, highlighting a single mother who benefited from expanded child tax credits can be more effective than citing economic statistics. Second, Democrats must expand their media presence and invest in grassroots organizing to reach voters who aren't tuned into traditional news outlets. This means leveraging social media, podcasts, and community events to build relationships and trust. Third, Democrats need to address cultural and identity-based concerns more directly. Instead of dismissing rural and working-class voters as backward or ignorant, they should acknowledge their struggles and offer solutions that respect their values. This includes framing progressive policies in ways that align with traditional American ideals like fairness, opportunity, and freedom. Finally, Democrats must call out Republican misinformation more forcefully while offering clear, alternative narratives. They can't assume voters will see through the lies on their own. They need to actively debunk myths and highlight Republican failures. In summary, Trump's success and the broader appeal of right-wing populism can be attributed to effective messaging, emotional resonance, and the widespread lack of political information among voters. To win back these voters, Democrats need to overhaul their communication strategies, prioritize emotional connections, and meet people where they are. Only by addressing these gaps can they counter the influence of right-wing narratives and build a stronger, more inclusive coalition.